How are we doing on this beautiful Sunday? Thank you all for coming. Sorry to keep you in the Timken Commons with such a beautiful day out there, but Friday and Saturday was like winter outside. Welcome to Ohio. Okay, so we're going to start off like we normally do, and that is to talk about the last seminar and a reflection. So take out your notes. And we had two sessions. One was Dr. King headed a session in healthcare on pharmacy. I understand it was a wonderful session, so I'd like some feedback. And also, Mrs. Myers did a session on career options right here in the common area. So let's start with healthcare and pharmacy. And Dr. King's in the back, so if we have any questions or follow-ups, he can handle it. So from everybody who was in the healthcare seminar, what did you think? What was your takeaways? What impressed you the most? What confused you the most? Data.
One of the things that impressed me the most was how much pharmacist technicians are actually needed in the pharmacy. Like, I didn't think they were needed that much.
Yeah, how much of a need there is for pharmacists. Jada didn't realize the need out there for pharmacy. So it is amazing because I remember I was in the consumer packaged goods industry, and I can remember visiting Giant Eagle in Pittsburgh at their headquarters and them talking about pharmacists and how hard it was for them to recruit in their pharmacies, and the fact that, can you believe that, paying $100,000 a year to run a pharmacy in a grocery store, and this was 8 years ago, and I was blown away at that time. So, and now if you think about Walgreens and Rite Aids and all of them having pharmacies, it's incredible. Yes, Doc?
I know one retired pharmacist. I don't know any unemployed pharmacists.
Doc does not know any unemployed pharmacists. That's great. That's great. Who else on pharmacy? Who else was in there? Mr. DK.
Everybody hear me?
Nope.
I liked how the technicians gave like real life examples saying like how we come in there every day and how people, it's actually a really hard job, but like with a nice team, because it's easily balanced and like a real nice work environment.
Yeah, those pharmacies, my father-in-law was a pharmacist in a hospital, but in the environments I was talking about, some of those pharmacy areas are pretty confined, so you wind up working in a tight group. You become very close. Yes, you did. Anybody else on pharmacy? Come on, it's got to be more than that. It's an hour and a half session. What does your note say? Yes.
I liked how Mr. Armitage said that for every physician specialty, there's a pharmacist specialty. I thought there was just like one pharmacist specialty. It was like general pharmacy, but there's actually an entire range of it.
So a full range of pharmacy that you can specialize in. What else? I was not in that session, otherwise I'd probably have a couple of things. But anybody else on pharmacy? Okay, let's talk about career options. Who was in the career options session? That's it? One person? 2, 3, 4. Okay, what did you learn about career options?
But we discussed how to evaluate your career and is there a need for it and what can you bring to the table that is going to change the game for your employers. Like, this is why I am like a special, I can become like make your business thrive, or this is how my talent is going to improve your business. So Ms. Myers explained to us what you want may not, like right now, may not be what your career is in the future. And you have to think about, am I gonna be able to make a profit off this? Can I support my family off of this career? Am I gonna have to make changes to be able to make a profit from this?
Excuse me, I have a cold, so my voice is very ugly today. But
I'm sorry, excuse me.
while we were in that part of the seminar, we were talking about the need for the career that you would like to go into, and the major that I was looking into was psychology. And Mrs. Myers was telling me that sometimes there isn't a big need for just regular psychologists, and so we started looking at stuff that branched off of that, and from that we got industrial psychology. And I actually did some research on that after that seminar, and it turned out that it is something I would like to go into, and it's a bigger need for it and a higher salary. So I like that because it actually got me thinking about my career and, you know, yeah.
Wow, so that, Mrs. Myers not here, but you can bet I will reach out to her tomorrow and tell her that, because that's what this is all about. Exactly what Jamisha said, and Mrs. Myers. There's things you want to do in life, and when it comes time to make those choices, which are going to be fairly soon, that are going to have substantial impact on your education, the cost of education, where you go, what you do. So the earlier you can have a general idea, the better. We talked many times about a safety net. So if psychology is something you'd like to pursue, and you're all very talented, you're going to leave here with 1 or 2 associate's degrees, you have plenty of time. You don't have to rush it. How about a minor in IT, or a minor in marketing, or a minor in international business, or something that you can fall back on just in case? So we talked about safety nets. But what Jamisha did was she took what Mrs. Myers had to say, and so Mrs. Myers knows the job market very well because she's in human resources. She's also running the tech program, so she's given constant guidance on careers and career options. So she's saying, hey, psychology, I'm making this up, 50% of people graduate with psychology degrees are not having difficulty finding jobs. So Jamisha took it 1 step further. She recommended industrial psychology. She went and did the research, found out that that job actually pays more than psychology, and so now it's having an impact on her. So that's exactly what this program is designed to do. It's exactly what we want you to get you thinking about, and making those efforts to do the research, making sure. We told you about a graduate who was going for a chemistry degree, and we got her an apprenticeship. It happened to be in Timken in engineering. She loves engineering. The problem is the school she's in right now does not have an engineering program. So guess what? She's got to make some decisions. That decision, if she changes, could cost her funding. It could be disruptive. It could mean that she has to spend more time in school, which again costs more money. So there's implications to all of those things. And we've paraded in the last almost 3 years, probably 20, 30 speakers in front of you. And I would guarantee you that 90% of them are not doing today what they originally thought they were going to do when they were sitting where you were. And because we asked that question on the bios. And I've looked at all the bios and I can remember, oh, I really wanted to be this. And this is how I got involved in this. And you've heard from all the operating committee members. We have 18 operating committee members. Most of them, same situation. So keep it open. Contingencies, we're big on that. So when you're looking for schools, when you're deciding on careers, have a safety net. Use the resources you have. You just had all the operating committee members that were, and we still have some of them with us. Pick their brain. Make sure that you're talking to them about options. Talk to Mr. Bruner, talk to me, and let's give you as many good options as possible, okay? What else came out of the career sessions? Anything else in the notes? Anything done? Anything else? One more thing from Jamisha.
In that session, she also mentioned that just in case you weren't really sure of what type of skills you had, to take aptitude tests, which will show you, like based on your interest and your skills, what career would be best for you. So I also did that, and it came back psychology. So that was a good thing to help me realize that I really was going for the right thing.
Susie, share. What was that program we did a couple years ago? We did it in the summer at Stark State. My Plan. Can we have a version of My Plan in the school system?
The students look in their packet. This is the one that they got. It's the one that says student portfolio, whatever it is. Inside of it, it has 3 links: My Plan, OhioNet, and Ohio Needs Jobs. Each one of those 3 have a survey that you can take for career interest and also a learning profile that some of them may have done at the beginning of the school year. So the idea is that the sophomores are going to be going through that because that's going to help them out with their career selection. But as juniors and seniors, you can always go back to revisit that on your own. My Plan is free through Stark State because you're a Stark State student. It's also on their website address. The other 2 are free under Kansas City. So you can take advantage of any one of those 3 links and do your career service profile and interest survey.
Okay, thanks. So please, I would recommend that you go on and do that. It will list 10. It will evaluate what it feels are your strengths and list 10 potential career options at the end, I believe, right, Susie?
Yes, and it also gives you information regarding your own personality profile.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
Right. One more.
She also told us that just because a school offers you maybe a full ride to a college, that doesn't mean it's the best school for your field of study. Like Mr. Venturelli, he gave us the example of Sade, who got a full ride to a university, and she got there and realized that they didn't even have what she wanted at that school. So she said it's best to consider colleges that have already established your major and who aren't new to the program and have connections within that city.
Dr. Porfelli says it's just as important for you to do your research and do an interview for colleges, or interview colleges to make sure they fit your needs as it is when you're ready for a job. That's a pretty powerful statement. So Dr. Porfelli had a whole, you can go look at his session on the web to refer to it, and he had a whole list of things to do as you're preparing and checking out schools. And So you would say, okay, well then how could that happen to Sade? How could she be in a school? She visited the school, they told her they had an engineering department, they told her it was accredited, and what she's finding out when she's taking the classes is that it's not. And then she benchmarked it against the University of Akron, and sure enough, she's very disappointed right now. But could she have done anything different? Maybe, but again, there's a financial element. She got a free ride. I mean, that's pretty tough to beat. You know, let's just talk about it. Maybe we can work on it together. Okay, December holiday event. Does Mrs. Bruno or Mrs. Venturella want to say anything about our holiday event that's happening?
We're looking forward to it.
They're looking forward to it.
December 13th from 3 to 6 p.m. The invitations are going to be going out tomorrow. So if you can possibly RSVP as soon as you can, you know, with the approximate number of, you know, family members that you anticipate can join us, that would be great. And I was talking to a couple of students about we need a little bit of help to set up the party, and I've gotten 2 volunteers already. We'll probably need 2 or 3 to volunteer to help with the cleanup after the party. So if anybody is interested in that, they can come see me afterwards.
We have 3 volunteers right up front here, and then I have a couple more, so I'll get your names. I saw 4. I saw 5. Raise your hand, Vivian. Okay, all right. All right, thank you all for doing that. But this is what you'll see in your mail when you see the really nice blue silver. It looks real Christmassy on like a snowier scale and colder scale. But please respond back as soon as possible, just like Mrs. Venturella said, because I need to know the count. We only have until December 4th to get the count, so I need to know how many people are coming in your family, because you can bring your family members, all right? I think that was basically it, other than making sure you respond, okay? Thank you all.
Thank you. Question? I asked about driver training last session, so we have the names of everybody who's anticipating attempting to take driver training by the spring. And I have somebody looking into contracting with some driver education schools to find out if we can get best rates. And then, so I should be able to let you know something in the next couple of weeks, what's going on. Who would also be looking for a car in the spring? Who would also be looking for a car in the spring? Mrs. Brunner, can you take these names down? The operating committee is not allowed to raise their hands. Mr. LaRocca. Keep your hands up high so we can see them. Okay. You got Donald?
I got the first row.
Dave, Jada? Did you not raise your hand? You need to have a license, yeah. Who else? Amisha? Yep, Tessa, Amisha, Megan? Mackenzie?
Yeah, I got you. Anybody else?
You got Mackenzie? Okay. All right, good. Mr. Bruno is going to say a couple of words, and then I'll give you some breakout instructions.
Thank you, Mr. David. I always want to thank Mr. Venturella and the members of the OpCom committee for all the things that they do to help you guys out. You guys would just be impressed with the things that they're putting in place for you. So we have to make sure that we do our due diligence and that we keep in communication with them. So whenever you receive an email or any sort of communication, it is very important that you would go to communicate and respond back. Because, you know, it's a nice practice and it's going to be something that will benefit you because you'll be practiced in it on graduation, when you leave college and you're going toward a career. A lot of folks love the fact that you're responding back to them, and I think we had a session on it except for the seniors, and it was on the written and oral communication piece. We had a guest speaker coming in. So the way that you guys saw that, where you had the greeting, then you had what you were looking for, and then you had the salutation, whatever, the little piece at the end. We would like you to use that style in communicating with Mr. V, Mrs. Brunner, or any of the OpCom members that you're associated with. And then you put down the response that you have, and you do it in a timely manner. Those things are very important. Remember, you guys are the example setters way up here at the top. And if, you know, you can CC me so that I can see that you're actually doing it. Because if I don't hear that the communication is happening, then I'm going to come in your classroom, interrupt you, and talk to you, and maybe have you practice right there beside me. Okay? So you'll be one of the folks in my office as people walking by saying, uh-oh, so you don't want to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. In addition to, I think when we brought back any of the individuals who had an apprenticeship this summer, plus the 7 graduates who did a panel, they explained to you that emails and communication is probably the #1 priority in the business world. If you don't get ready for it now, on-the-job training in that area will not be acceptable. So we're trying to teach you those good skills right now. Mr. Bruner, a couple of questions have come up on application fees, and the two this week that came up were on Akron University. Is there any special instructions that we should give these students from an in-school standpoint?
You guys, make sure that you see Ms. Humphrey, for those that do qualify for the waiver. And if you don't fit that or don't qualify, then make sure that I know. I'm going to pass your name on to Mr. Carter, because the idea was that when names were submitted for the application day, that was Akron and Kent, they were both participants in that, along with the other schools, that the fee was going to be waived. So we're going to hold them accountable.
Yeah, and so then, as soon as you go through those 2 processes, if they don't work and there's something that, then you'll let me know right away? Okay. Camp will help any way we can. It's just, I do not want to spend a lot of our resources on application fees that either were committed to and should have been funded somehow, some way. I'd rather take those resources and use them for transportation and buses to an engineering fair, or a trip to colleges, or those kinds of things, okay? Clothes for a job for the summer. So I'm not saying the money would be wasted on applications, but certainly if there's money out there that we can access, I'd like to try that first, and then let me know right, through Mr. Bruner and Mrs. Bruner, let me know right away. Okay, for your breakouts, you are to take your books, your binders. Also, you followed those instructions well, but you left your 10 cards behind, or your lanyards. That all has to go with you. Let's see, we have 2 breakouts today, exciting breakouts. One is engineering with Mr. LaRocca and his guests, and one is with Dr. King and his guests. They're going to escort you there. We also have a web team that's going to meet. So raise your hand if you're not declared engineering or healthcare. Not declared engineering or healthcare. Okay. I would like to give you your choice of healthcare or engineering to attend, to see what those speakers are all about, what those careers are all about, if you don't mind. Okay? Are you okay with that? All right. Gabe, you'll come into the web team with Jonathan, Jacob, Vivian, yourself, myself, and Mrs. Bruno. Okay? Everybody else will have a place in either healthcare. I did tell Dr. King that you had to leave at 3, and I did tell Dr. King that you had to leave at 3:30. Okay? Okay. Also, I need to see over here before you go. I need to see Dom and Logan. Is Logan here? Logan's not here today, right? Dom, Natasha, and Gabe. I need to see the 3 of you over here, if you wouldn't mind, before you head off. So, have a good session. We'll see you when you finish.
I think we'll get started. We have 2 people here today from Mercy. One is Gary Greathouse, who's been there 20-some years, and he's the head of radiology technology at Mercy. And I think we'll be able to give you a lot of good information. He completed his radiography education at Harvard and Citizens in '83. Then he had an associate degree of applied science in '85 with a bachelor's of technical education in '88 and a master's of technical education with a minor in community counseling in 2000, all from the University of Akron. He served on local and state societies in different capacities, presently on the board of directors of the Ohio Society of Radiologic Technologists, OSRT, that's a lot easier. He is an alumni member of the American Society of Radiologic Technologists, Leadership Academy. Gary served management chapter delegate for ASRT and was recently elected to serve as a delegate in the same chapter. He's traveled in humanitarian capacity to Honduras, 04, 06, 08, becoming a contact person in Honduras to improve imaging and medical education of the general public in Santa Rosa, Honduras. Gary most recently traveled to Nairobi, Kenya in July 13 as a recipient of the ASRT Fellowship Grant in partnership with RAD and AAID International to improve radiology services in Kenya. So, Gary, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what radiology is and what it means to me. And when we talk about radiology, it's really good that I have my counterpart, Susan Black, here, because we think about, it's probably a better term to use the term imaging, because there's lots of different ways to get images within the human body. Some of it's by sound waves, if you talk about ultrasound. Some of it's by radio waves and magnetic strength, if you talk about MRI. And some of it's about using radiation in small doses, which is what radiology is. It's really kind of interesting that I had this talk ending the week we call National RT Week, or National Radiologic Technology Week was all last week. And we were actually celebrating the discovery of X-rays, which was 120 years ago, actually, 1895, November 8th. I'm not big on dates, but I always make sure my students have to know that date because it's a requirement. But when you think about radiology, I will give you some of my impression over the past 34 years I've been involved with it. And then what I'd like to do is open it up at the end so you can ask me any questions you have. Having been in the profession at several different levels, in the management realm, as a radiologic technologist or an RT, as a student technologist, which is what we're going to focus on a little bit here to start. I want to be a resource person for you if you have questions. First of all, since everybody has their pen and paper and everything, I can tell you my phone number directly to the school. It's 330-489-1273. That's a direct dial line to the school office if you have questions. Okay. I also will give you my email address at work. It's gary.greathouse, just like it sounds, great house, at cantonmercy.org. Before I talk to you a little bit about radiology, I want to encourage you to do one thing. No matter what you're thinking about with the healthcare profession, the best way to find out about it is to shadow. Our volunteer services are excellent as far as getting students into whatever area they need to go to for usually like a 4-hour block to shadow a person or a professional that's in the profession, to give them an idea of whether you want to do this profession or not. Volunteer services, I'll give you, they have a direct line too. It's 330-489-1106.
Here, exactly.
Yeah, it's 489-1106. The lady's name is Brooke. Just ask for Brooke or Lisa, either one of those people will help you. I was going to say Whitney, but Brooke took over for her just recently. That's the best way to find out whether you like a profession. I've had students say, boy, I'm glad I shadowed because I really like radiology and this, that, and the other thing. And I've had other students say, I'm glad that I shadowed because this isn't what I want to do at all, which is great. I mean, because if you come to my program and you're thinking about being a student here, it has to be a good fit for us both. I want you to be happy because you're going to be with me for 2 years. When you think about radiology as a profession, every school around here requires that you have some prerequisites at a college level in order to get in. Okay. For radiology now, it became standardized about 5 years ago that the prerequisites you would need, at least for our program, you're going to need anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 at a college level. You're going to need medical terminology. And you can pick these things up at local colleges around here. Stark State, I'm a big advocate of. They work really well with students. Actually, my son goes there. He's just turned 21 less than a month ago. Loves Stark State because the classes are smaller and there's a lot more individualized attention from the instructor. So I said A&P 1 and 2 and med term. You would need an English composition class at the college level. You're going to need a psychology class. And I know this sounds really awful to say this, because students always cringe when they think of this, but you need a speech class at a college level. Speech or communications class. Once you have all those classes completed, then you contact me and we keep in contact if this is something you want to do. And I have to tell you, GPA matters. Your grades matter. I'm the guy who sits at a desk when your transcripts come across it. I'm the guy who questions or asks you why you missed X amount of days. It's important that you keep up your grades. Attitude matters, and attendance really does matter. We have a 3-step process we do for selecting students, and to give you some kind of idea about it, we are pretty selective when it comes to the students we take into our program. This year in July I started 8 new students. We only started 8, but I had 65 applicants. So if you have 65 people, I couldn't interview all those people that met all the qualifications. There were just too many. So one of the things they look at, like I told you, is GPA. The average GPA for students we had starting in that class is a 3.4. So that's a little bit better than a B+. It's on the border of a B+, almost to an A- level. So it's really important to keep your grades up. And attend class, make sure you do what you need to do. Because that looks good on my end when I see it. The other thing is when you do the shadow, ask lots of questions when you do the volunteer shadow. And I really strongly encourage that you do that, even if it's not something you would want to do. So we look at your grades. That's one way we do it. But we do have an interview process. Some programs do interview students, other ones do not. I know, for example, just because of being in the know, the Altman program does not interview students for radiography. They just have a different way that they do things. But all the other programs around the area do. The Children's Hospital program, my program, Cleveland Clinic, because I'm familiar with that person up there also, does interviews, as does Kent State, the Salem program. So I personally enjoy the interview process because it gives me a chance to say, okay, this person's a 3-5, but would they really fit in a profession that's so hands-on and so people-oriented? It's so important that you be able to communicate. I can't say that enough. I would rather have a student that's getting grades in the 2.5, 2.7 range that can talk somebody's ear off than it is having somebody who's a 4.0 that can't talk to somebody. Patients deserve your care, they need your care, and you are their point of contact when you're in there. Can't say that enough. When I think about radiology, I see it as a fit of two different worlds. Okay. You have the high tech, which we have. You want the latest and greatest medical equipment to work on? Mercy has it. Okay. PET CT fusion scanners, and we have MRI scanners, we have a couple of them. All the different equipment that we have, we are always constantly upgrading and everything. But the one thing we can't upgrade is the people skills. You have to have that stuff when you come to me. It's important that you instinctively know how to work with people in a way that is communicative and helpful. For example, let me give you an example. From my perspective, I shouldn't have to ask a student, why don't you give that person a blanket if you see him sitting there shivering? Because to me, common sense is you would just do it. Or you would ask that question, you know what I mean? But I think that's the toughest part for me when I think about that soft skill, I guess if you want to call it a soft skill, working with people and being a good communicator. It's something I can't teach. That's what you bring to the table for me that I use the interview for, to try to find that out. That's the thing that you've learned for 18 years growing up. Those are the things your parents taught you. Those are the things that your people that are most influential in your life taught you. Maybe you learned them from your religious background. Maybe you learned them from a friend or from, like I said, a parent or another guardian person. But they're so important for what we do because patients deserve that care and they need it. When you think about radiology as a profession, and I do use the word profession, I don't teach you a job. I give students the opportunity to have a career. Okay. So when you think about radiology and what you can do with it, it's endless. It's endless. I have students over the 21 years I've taught at Mercy that went on to do radiation therapy, where they use radiation to treat cancer patients. A lot of my students have went on to Sue's group and learned ultrasound technology, work in the cardiac cath lab, doing vascular imaging for heart disease, any number of things. Medical dosimetrists, where they calculate doses for radiation therapy patients, and on and on and on. Mammographers, I have a mammographer in Clearwater, Florida that came from my program. I have people all over the United States that graduated from my program that went on to do different things. The only thing that stops you from being the professional or the goal-oriented person you are is right there. You stop yourself. And if you were paying attention when that was being read, and when we talked about all the different things I did, I came from a program similar to what I did. I went to what I teach in now, a hospital-based program, but I didn't stop there. I went on to get my associate degree in applied science, and I went on to get my teaching degree, and then my master's level teaching degree, all from the University of Akron. And I am an alumni from the UA and have been since 2000. But it's important that if you have goals, that you don't let yourself get stifled. If you have things that you want to do, keep on moving in that direction. If you have that drive, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. Because I'm sure I've had many people over the years tell me I shouldn't do it or I can't do it. Radiology has brought to me lots of opportunities I would have never had. Like we talk about going to third world countries to help. All of those things happen because of the profession I was in. Those doors opened because of the fact that I had a radiology background. A couple of years ago when I went to Kenya, they wanted a radiology instructor to look at their school and tell them what their curriculum was as to what they needed to do to meet or become closer to US standards for what students are taught in our program here. So it's very eye-opening and it's very enriching to be able to do things and help other people. And none of those things I could have done without being a radiology background. And I've been in radiology for 34 years. I shouldn't say that too loud, but it's been 34 years. I'm not that old. It doesn't seem like I'm that old. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background about salary, just so you have an idea about what starting salary is. In the Canton area, in and around Mercy, Albany, and Affinity and around there, it's probably in the mid-30s to start. 30,000 range, 35, 36, maybe a little bit higher. I don't know why this is, but if you go to the Akron area, it's probably in the low 40s, it's higher. In Cleveland, it's even higher. And that's that way all over the United States. For example, if you would work in Denver, you would get paid a lot more money than if you worked in Boulder or some other areas that are smaller. The inner cities and the metro areas do pay a little bit more. So that gives you some idea about salary range. It is a 2-year profession, associate degree. And like I said, to me personally, it's very enriching to think about what kind of things you can do with it. There's no end. We are the jump-off point for so many different things. And there's nothing wrong with being a rad tech or a radiologic technologist for 2 years. I did it for 11 before I went into teaching. And when people ask, maybe you'll ask me this too after we get done with this stuff, what is your typical day like? I can't answer that question because it's different every day. I can have 50 people for chest x-rays and I'll get 50 different experiences. And what you do and how you interact with the patient gives you a different feel every single time. I can tell you, and I've explained to my students, if you have somebody who comes in to the hospital that's a little bit grumpy or a little bit off, your demeanor can change the whole thing. You can choose to be cranky and escalate the whole thing, which is not what I approve at all, or you can kill them with kindness and it brings them right back down. That's what it's all about. Like I said, that's communicative skills that we were talking about earlier. I'd like to ask now, if anybody has any questions. I could stand up here and talk all day long. I don't want to do that. Yes?
What's the highest level of math that is required?
Algebra, college level algebra is what's required at the prerequisite level. I've had students that have had calculus before. I don't have a problem with it. It has to be at least at that level, but higher certainly is not a problem. I had a student in my program now that has statistics, which is on the higher end. But they do require it at a college level. Do you guys have post-secondary here? Are you allowed to take college credit while you're in high school?
When we graduate, we'll have our associates.
Oh, you'll have your associate's degree. I guess I never really understood that. An associate degree in...
Mine is in science. There's
What do you know about that?
What did you major in? She has 2.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, things have changed so much in the 30 years since I was in high school. They've just changed so much, it's just beyond my belief. That's excellent. Well, then you could come right into, your profession, because where did you get who are you affiliated with?
First State.
All right.
Yeah, the only one that we don't have is an AIP.
AIP 1 and 2?
Right. We have
speech we have had.
We have human biology. Some schools are kind of the
Yeah,
same as others.
Human biology is a tricky one, and that's through Stark State.
Yeah.
I'd have to read the course description, and I'd have to run that through my advisor at Akron, because we do have, university approves of all of our courses if they're going to transfer. And if you would come into my program, we've been affiliated with UA since 2011. So any student that gets into my program, the transfer credits would have to go through them. So what they would do is they have something that's called a DARS sheet, where they check back and forth between each college to make sure what transfers and what does not. So that was something I'd have to look at. But human biology is tricky because I know at Kent it's a disguised A&P class. I'm not sure what it is at Stark. Good questions. And you actually taught me some stuff right now that I did not know. You graduate with Associate of Applied Science. Wow. Anybody else have any questions I can answer? Yes.
I'm a psychology major, hold on alone.
Okay.
And I'm taking physiological psychology.
Okay.
And my professor was saying, she took a radiology, she's a psychiatrist, and she took a radiology course, but they use rats, but she went to Ohio State. Did you guys test the rats or?
No, we don't do any
Okay.
research.
Okay.
It makes sense that OSU does a lot of research, and I've seen a lot of submissions for research projects through OSU. They have a really strong research background there, even at the state level. Because I actually was a judge for competition for some of the research projects, and they're really big into data and doing different things like that. So that's a good question. I want my students to do that, but I can't get them to do it. I can't get them to enter those contests, and they need to. Anybody else have a question I can answer? Those are good questions back there. Yes?
Could you go briefly over MRI, CT, PET, nuclear, some of the subspecialty areas?
Sure. I can give you a little bit of background about each. MRI has been around since probably 1985. It's still what they call in its infancy development stage. There's still a lot more to come with it. And what it does is it uses magnetic strength and radio waves to create an image. And without getting into too much detail, because I could very easily, and I don't want to do that. Has anybody had an MRI? All right, good. Well, you know that big machine that's like a big square with the hole in the middle of it? It's a magnet. When you go inside of there, what they do is they put a lot of voltage through essentially what's a wire cage in there, which creates magnetic strength. Because every time you have current that goes through a wire, it creates its own magnetic field. So that's the whole science behind the magnetic strength that it creates. And what happens essentially is your body, it sets up hydrogen protons to either be facing towards the North Pole or south, and they all line up together. And once they get that, everything all lined up, once they put through that radio pulse, it changes their orientation, sends back information to the computer, which reorients that data as an image. And some of the images are magnificent that come from MRI. The detail is exquisite. And between MRI and CT, which I'll talk about in just a minute, they've pretty much eliminated what we used to call exploratory surgery, which in the early days, before CT, which came out in the early 70s, sometimes if a physician didn't know what was wrong, they opened you up, stem to stern to look around. Yeah, I mean, CT ended that. CT's been around since the early 70s, 1972, not that I'm big on dates. But it allows you to do sectional images, which we call slices, to peer inside of the body from top to bottom, side to side, front to back. So if there's specific areas of the body you're looking at, we can see it without having to do surgery to do it. Maybe they locate a tumor on one particular portion of the liver and they know exactly where it is. So if that surgeon is going to do their surgery, when they go inside, they know exactly where to go without having to just search around or dig.
Or they might biopsy it under CT
Yes.
guidance or ultrasound.
Right. I mean, ultrasound is real big now for guided imaging. I mean, when you're looking at specific areas of tumor or to do a section, to take different parts of tissue out, as a CT. Yep.
To enter your program, do you guys get ACT scores there?
We do not anymore. There are, but that's a good question, but Altman does. There are some programs that still use ACT. I know, well, like I said, I think there's a big rumbling at the University of Akron as to whether or not they're going to accept ACT. And there's a lot of colleges that have dropped it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of colleges that have dropped it.
How does chemistry tie into radiology?
It used to at one time, but it is not anymore. We don't even look at chemistry grades in the college level. But like I said, I'm saying that, and I can tell you right now that Altman does. I know for a fact they look at chemistry as a class, and they require that you have it. So I'm telling you how my program works, but I certainly want you to, if radiology is something you want to do, but let's say you did your shadow and you wanted to go get further into it, research every school around here, or even in surrounding states if you're trying to go outside of it, to see what their prereqs are. Some are slightly different than others, but ours are pretty standardized. I know what we require, Children's Hospital requires, Cleveland Clinic requires, Kent Salem requires, so most of them still do. But you know, we dropped the chemistry requirement a few years back. It's probably been 10 years. And we just recently dropped the ACT requirement. Because, like I said, some colleges don't even use it. I mean, I'll look at it if it's on there. I'm not going to lie to you. But it doesn't come into play. And I guess the best way I can explain this too, when we get to the point where I'm looking at which candidates I'm going to consider, 80% of what I look at is based on grades. And the other 20% is your interview score. Yes?
I do have another question. So since we'll be graduating with our associate's degree, do you think entering your program will give us like a more of a bonus to getting accepted?
It could definitely be an advantage.
Okay.
Because I have people that come to my program that are, they have bits and pieces of college credits everywhere. I have students that, let's say they went to Malone 7 or 8 years ago, and then they went to UA a few years after that, and they took 3 or 4 classes, and then they went to Stark for a while, and I don't really count anything that's more than 5 years old. So that gives them a little bit of an advantage if they had a struggle at first. And sometimes there is at least at Akron, they call it freshman forgiveness. If you have problems in a class, that you can retake it, and they'll take the better of the 2 scores. Because some people really struggle coming out of high school and going into college for a lot of reasons, especially if they live on campus. Those are all good questions. Thank you. Did you have another one?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't trying to shut you down. I was just saying, would you have a good question?
Anyone else have questions?
I do.
Yes.
You were saying how you went out of countries for your
Yes, I did.
Was like your program off that for instruments like I don't know like kind of work it's like in the program can you like the document that you did it's like abroad like you guys offer that like maybe under the girl country maybe out to study abroad.
There is a possibility to do it. The reason why I got chosen to go is because I was part of a national society, the ASRT, American Society of Radiologic Technologists, and I applied for a fellowship grant to go. I know that the organization RAD-AID, which stands for Radiology Aid, is a nonprofit that's only purpose is to help imaging services in other countries. And they just had their forum in Annapolis, Maryland, just recently. I think it was last week. They're everywhere. They were in Malawi. They've been in India. They've been in Sudan. They've been in China and Nicaragua. And basically, how I did it is, I went online for a survey, and they said, what kind of skills do you have? What are you willing to do? Does your employer allow you to leave for X amount of days to be able to do it? Where would you like to be stationed? And they would tell you Central America, Africa, India, China, whatever. And then you would get the opportunity, if they found the fit right for you, and they needed a radiology instructor at the time. And that's how I ended up in Kenya. It's actually a pretty funny story because I wanted to go back to, I knew they were in Nicaragua and I wanted to go back to Central America because I'd been in Honduras and I was familiar with Spanish-speaking countries. Not that I speak that well myself, but I knew a little bit of lay of the land. And I got a call from the Rad 8 official and they said, what about going to Kenya? Do you have a problem with that? And is that okay? I know you said you wanted to go to Central America and that's where you've been. I said, no, I think it's fine. She goes, good, you leave in 2 weeks. You need to get these shots and this is where you need to go get them at. And it's like, wow. Yeah, I mean, and then I had a Skype conference call with her outside of Washington, D.C. And she set up everything. They made up all the travel arrangements. And I got the opportunity to go and I can honestly tell you I could have not, there's no way I could have done that without their help. The round trip ticket to Kenya was $2,800 and I paid not a cent because they wanted somebody with the skill and expertise to go over there to be the eyes and the ears person to learn what they could about the system, what kind of things they could do to fix it and help them do different things and work out to where they needed to be. Very neat. I'm big on community service anyway. That's just my personal.
Are there any other questions for Gary?
Like I said, I could go on here all day, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to steal time from my counterpart there.
Let's give Gary a thank you. Now we have, I'm going to introduce briefly Sue Black. She's going to talk about diagnostic medical sonography, career options therein. She has a bachelor's degree in diagnostic medical sonography from Florida Hospital College of Health Sciences, worked at Mercy for 25 years, first as a staff sonographer and now as a supervisor in ultrasound and the program director of the sonography school. My daughter recently went through that school and has a very high regard for the school and for Sue. I'm sure she will be helpful and give you a lot of knowledge and good tips. I appreciate you coming, Sue.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. Looks like you guys, everybody's taking notes. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, so right.
You don't always see that, you know?
You don't see that at all.
I think there's two there. Boy, thank you. Got some handouts here, just with some basic information.
Very fun.
Take one of each of these. If there's extras, I'll collect them up at the end.
Can I have some if you don't mind?
Sure. There you go. Okay, so first, just to tell you a little bit about the field of sonography, we use high-frequency sound waves. They go into the human body and kind of work like sonar. It bounces off against the organs, goes back to the equipment converts that into an image that we can see. And there's a lot of different specialties in ultrasound. I do general ultrasound, and that's what we teach at Mercy Medical Center. General ultrasound is abdominal, female pelvis, OBGYN. We also scan what we call superficial structures, so thyroid, breast, testicle, prostates, and that kind of thing. We scan joints, shoulders and knees for musculoskeletal disorders like tears and things like that. We also do a little bit of pediatric neurosonography where we scan the baby's brain, the baby's spine for different conditions. So that's general sonography. Another specialty is vascular sonography, and that looks at just the arteries and veins, looking for blood clots in the legs and things like that. And then there's cardiac sonography, and In that, they have an adult specialty and a pediatric specialty because they're a little bit different on their techniques of how they do things. So those are the major categories of ultrasound. We do general sonography. With sonography, because we can image patients without radiation, we're used more and more for pediatrics because they try to minimize that radiation in the little kids especially. And of course, OB, you certainly don't want to give a fetus radiation, so ultrasound's big for OBs. And I think that's probably what everybody knows, that's what we do. But that's about 35% of our actual job every day. The nice thing about being in a general department is you get to scan a gallbladder, then a fetus, and then a pelvis, and a thyroid. So there's a lot of different variety in what you're doing. And it kind of keeps the day interesting and exciting. And every patient you scan is going to be different than the previous one. Even if they're normal, everybody's anatomy is a little bit different. Does anybody like anatomy, physiology, pathology? Got some people here? Great, great. Well, that's exactly what we do with ultrasound. If you like those things, that's our everyday job. So we always start with the patient's history. We want to find out, where's your pain? Do you have a fever? We take that information, we look at their lab work if it's available, see if there's any indication of a fever, like an elevated white blood cell count. Or maybe their labs are off and it indicates an obstruction of the bile ducts or gallbladder. So we take their symptoms, plus the lab work, and then we kind of form in our minds what we're going to be looking for. And then as we're doing our imaging, what we find, we may change the exam a little bit. You're expected to know what to do if you find this thing. So if you find a kidney tumor, you have to know to look in the renal vein, and you have to check the lymph nodes around the aorta and check the liver for metastases and things like that. So there's a lot of discretion that's put on the sonographer that the radiologist, the doctor that reads the ultrasounds, he expects us to know this, and without him telling us to do this. So it's kind of a neat job. You work very closely with the doctors, and they put a lot of trust in you too. With ultrasound, you can see on the sheet there the prerequisites. A lot of sciences here. Human anatomy and physiology, and that should be 1 and 2, but we do accept human structure and function or human biology in place of that. General physics, which a lot of people are like, oh no, not physics. Just general physics, 101, it's not that bad. Because with the ultrasound registries that you would take after you graduate from our program, you have to take 3 exams. One is a physics registry. It is a 2-hour physics exam, but it's not as bad as it sounds because unlike other physics, ultrasound physics, you can see it by changing your controls. You can see it on your screen, what you're doing. So it makes a lot more sense, I think, than some of the other physics. I was never a big fan in high school, I have to say, but I love ultrasound physics. And I teach it, so I make it fun. We also have communication skills, could be speech. Medical terminology, which I can't stress that enough, because there's so many pathologies that if you know the medical terms, they're little root words, you can figure out the right word for what you're looking for. And then human disease, which is a pathophysiology class. Okay, so those are prerequisites along with a 2.5 GPA in college. And because we're a 1-year program, we do require that you have a 2-year health degree. So that would be medical assisting, radiologic technology, and a lot of our students come from those kind of programs. It could be nursing, massage therapy, occupational therapy assistant, anything that's a hands-on patient care program we can accept. We have to require that because that's what our registry requires. And you have to take that registry when you graduate. You need to be a registered sonographer. So, and that's our program. And like I said, we're a one-year program. We accept students into our program in April, and that's when we do our interviews. We accept our students, and then they begin in July of every year, and then they graduate the following June. So it's a one-year program on top of a two-year program like Gary's. There are other options, and you should know about those, because you should never put all your eggs in one basket and think you're definitely getting in this one school. You have to apply everywhere you possibly can. So know that you can look that up on the internet. Let me give you the website. It's caahep.org. caahep.org. And then you can do a search for accredited schools. Another important thing, make sure your school's accredited. There's a lot of programs out there that will take a lot of your money, and then you can't sit for your registries, and then you're out of luck. And some of them, thankfully, have recently closed down that were in this area. But just be careful. If they're asking for like $50,000 for a one-year program, that's probably not a legitimate program, at least in ultrasound. Probably for yours too.
Right, we just had one that closed recently.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think the trigger is the sheer amount of money they're asking.
Yeah, if something seems a little off, do your investigation, see who they're accredited by, and then sometimes you can be accredited, but it's not an appropriate accreditation. So then cross-check it with the Department of Education and make sure it's an actual thing.
Make sure make sure that they're an accredited crook.
Right, yeah, yeah, exactly. So you want to be careful about that. So our work environment, you can work in a hospital, and that's probably where most sonographers work, but a lot of sonographers can also work in doctor's offices. And generally, those are OBGYN offices, but sometimes there's other physicians that you can work for. Musculoskeletal, I had mentioned before, with joints and muscles. That's becoming more and more popular. A lot of rheumatologists are starting to use that on a lot of patients now. Job outlook. We made the top 10. This last, yeah, we did. I was so happy to see that. So they expect our field to grow 39% between 2012 and 2022, which is faster than most occupations. In the Canton area, though, you have to know, we take 4 students every year. We only take 4 because we don't want to flood the market. But there are programs in nearby communities that put out 20, 30 students, and just kind of like, good luck, hope you get a job. We limit our number of students to try to make sure all of our students get a job, or do the best that we can by our students. Are you going to get a full-time day shift job when you graduate? Maybe. Maybe. Depends on, people have babies, decide to stay home, people retire, but you can't count on that if you're going to stay in Canton, Ohio. If you're willing to go to Akron, if you're willing to go to Youngstown or Cleveland, yeah, you're probably going to find a full-time job, day shift. If you're willing to work second shift, more likely to find a job in the area. If you're willing to work third shift and weekends, you're going to be more likely to find a job. And unfortunately, as a new grad, you end up doing these horrible shifts and these horrible hours in a lot of different jobs. And probably, I would say, radiology, that's probably true too.
Yeah. True.
Until you're there for about a year or two, you have your foot in the door, and then when something comes up inside, you can apply for it, and then you get that sweet job that you've been looking for. So know that. If you want to move to another state, you probably for sure, I would say, yeah, you're going to get a job. I had a student go to Fargo, South Dakota? North Dakota? North Dakota? And he got a sign-up bonus of $5,000 to move there, and relocation assistance. And he has to work there for 2 years. And then once he works there for 2 years, he's free and clear to go somewhere else if he wishes. But that's what he wanted to go to a place that's more rural or whatever. So that worked out for him. Training options. Like I said, there's the one-year program at Mercy. There's 2-year programs at places like Tri-C, COTC down in Newark, Ohio. And there are 4-year programs like Kent State. Kent State is not accredited by KHEP, although the college is accredited, so their students, I think, can take the registry. Starting wage, about $22 an hour, so that's $45,000, $46,000 a year in Canton, Ohio. But as Gary mentioned, you go to Akron, you go to Cleveland, you're going to be making $1, $2 more, kind of further north you go. And so that's not bad money. You can raise a family on that, and I have. I have. So what kind of questions do you have for me? Yeah.
Is there like something a sonographer can pick up that a radiologist can't, like in an exam?
That's a really good question. Yeah, they have to rely on us because we can hide things that are there, or we can make stuff up, and yeah, they completely rely on us. When you're new to the field, your radiologist will not rely on you. He will make you go back in the room, he will stand behind you, he will watch your work, he'll send you back in for other pictures, and you'll be a little bit frustrated, but once they learn to trust you, then it's kind of all in your hands, what you put on those images for the doctor. Now there's a certain protocol that a lot of things, if you don't pick it up, the doctor will probably see it. But when it's a large organ like the liver, unfortunately, you could miss it if you don't know what you're doing.
So when you talk about the prerequisites, these are all the like classes that we have to have before we sign up, apply for your program.
Mm-hmm.
And is there like a tuition cost for your program?
Our program right now is $14,000 for the year. Okay, books are about $800. You have to buy white uniforms and white shoes. Those big $200. So you're looking at probably $1,500 for the one-year program. At Mercy, I'm not part of University of Akron. I'm still Mercy Medical Center, and they don't make you pay all your tuition up front or anything like that. So if you were a student of mine, you come see me and you tell me how you can pay. I can pay each month. I can pay every quarter. I had one student wait. She paid some during the year, but not too much, and then she put it all on her credit card at the very end. But her husband was a resident in gastroenterology, I think, so they figured, well, he's going to be getting a job, we could pay this off. I wouldn't encourage that, but there's a lot of different payment options, is what I'm saying. We're not like a college that if you don't pay, you're out of here. You just have to pay before I can let you take your registries, because they have to pay me somehow.
So this is a weird question. So I know you said like sound waves to get the images back.
Right.
Do you hear like if you're doing something in someone's head, like can they hear that, or is it like?
They can't hear the actual ultrasound. Dogs can't even hear the ultrasound. It's like we use anywhere from 2 megahertz to 1 million cycles per second, and dogs only hear I think 400,000 cycles per second. So it's way too high for anybody to hear. No dogs, no bats can hear it, but you will hear sometimes a little sound, and that's just the electronics of the actual probe that you're holding. What it does is it sends a little electrical signal down to the transducer crystal that's in the face of the probe, and that's made out of a ceramic material that's polarized. And so when the electric pulse hits that, it vibrates, sends a mechanical wave down into the body, which is a sound wave, sends it back. When it strikes the face of the transducer, changes it back to electrical energy, and that's what the ultrasound unit interprets. Yes?
I think I heard that too much radiology is bad for you. That is the same with sonography, like too much of it is like can affect your system.
They have, to this date, they have not found any harmful biological effects with diagnostic ultrasound. Can it harm you? There's a potential because it is a type of energy. So there is a LARA principle that we go by as low as reasonably achievable. So we try not to take too long. We try not to crank up the intensity of ultrasound and use it well, just in case there is some sort of problem. It has been around since the 1940s. Okay, it's been around since the 1940s, though I don't think it really gained popularity until maybe like the mid-60s or 70s. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Okay. Any Any other questions?
So the patient is coming from their doctor's office with a prescription to you,
Yes.
and then you will make a determination of how many images or the area to image, how to capture whatever the problem is that the person's presenting with?
Somewhat. We do have established protocols. So we know if somebody comes in for a gallbladder ultrasound, we look at the pancreas in longitudinal and transverse planes. We look at the liver in longitudinal and transverse planes, and then we look at the gallbladder the same way, and then we image the bile ducts. So there's a standard protocol that you have to follow in certain images you have to send to the doctor. But depending on what we find, if we find a stone in the neck of the gallbladder, or we suspect there's a stone in the neck of the gallbladder that we can't demonstrate, we roll the patient up on their side, we may sit them up, have them stand. So there's different things that we can add if we feel is necessary. Question? Yes?
So when we go to college next year and we have like some of these classes that we have to take, then we would major as a pre-medicine?
If you're going to go to Stark State, especially if you're going to have an associate's degree already, what you would want to do is find one of their health programs. You know, if you're really set on ultrasound, find one of their health programs that interests you and that hopefully a lot of your credits you've already taken are already covered so that you can get into that program quicker and then move on and do what you want to do. But like Gary said, it's really, really important that you shadow. A lot of people think ultrasound is wonderful, it's so fun. It can be fun. It can be fun if you have a nice normal baby, but you gotta remember, you're gonna find some bad findings. You're gonna find babies with anomalies. You're gonna find, unfortunately, dead babies. You're gonna find tumors. And you're the only person that knows this poor lady laying here has a tumor in their pancreas. And you have to like not show it on your face. It can be kind of emotionally stressful, you know, sometimes when you're dealing with all these patients with all these things that are wrong with them. It is a really interesting job. I can't think of any job I'd rather do than ultrasound because it's like you're a detective. You take all that information, you investigate, and you come to a conclusion. You know, and you're using high frequency waves. It's like big technology there. And it keeps changing. There are things out now that didn't exist in 1990 when I graduated from my associate's degree program in ultrasound. So it changes fast. I wouldn't do anything else. It's the most interesting job in the world. But my daughter, she's 20, she's going to Stark State right now taking prereqs. She thinks it's the grossest job in the world because of some of the places that we have to insert probes. She wants nothing to do with that. She doesn't want to go into ultrasound at all. So it's good to come in and shadow and see, but if it's something that can fit with your lifestyle, with your qualities of your personality, and the things that you want to do. Go ahead.
So like when you said that you guys have to deal with like the good and the bad things, so when you do have somebody who like you know that their baby is dead or that they have a tumor, like are you allowed to tell them?
No, in fact, we're not supposed to tell them because that's diagnosing and only a physician can diagnose by law. Otherwise, it's practicing medicine without a license. You're not allowed to tell them.
How do you just like sit there like, oh my gosh, this person's baby it's not living?
It's bad. The first few times you go through that, sometimes you leave the room and then you start crying because you haven't dealt with it before. And there are some days where you just have patient after patient that are like that, and after a while, you know, I've had a day where I've been like, I am not scanning any more babies today, I can't do it. And so they give me, you know, other things to scan, gallbladders and things like that.
Right.
And we know that happens to all of us. But after a while, when you work in the healthcare field, you sort of learn not to sympathize, you more empathize with the patient. You've got a job to do, so you have to do it. And, you know, it takes its toll on you some days when you know, this couple's been trying to have a baby for 10 years, they finally get pregnant, and this baby has horrific anomalies that's incompatible with life. That's tough. That's tough. But you know that by doing your job as professionally as possible, you're helping the patient. You know, if you fall apart and you can't complete that exam, you may miss things that could be important information to the doctor. So that's kind of how you get through it. you learn. And our sonographers are really great. They help our students. We only take 4 students, so, you know, they're like part of our department. You know, they're ours, and we take care of them. And so that's what we do with our students. We teach them how do you cope with it? Well, we'll get you through it. Yeah,
I don't think I could do it. I'd probably cry. Oh my gosh.
it's tough at first, it is, but you do. You learn how to be professional, and that's always what you fall back on. Sometimes you have patients that are very difficult to deal with, and you're just professional but caring, and you learn how to balance that all out and make everybody happy. And for me, some of the grumpiest patients are my favorite patients because they're the biggest challenge for me to get them to smile by the time they leave.
But the bad news, it probably helps if you play poker, I guess.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
because they're always pushing you for information.
They sure do. Yeah, we don't get to go, like Gary's people are lucky. They get to leave the room and hit the button, so they're not right there with the patient. We're right, like the patient's laying here and our arm is like on their belly while we're scanning them, and they've got you there. They're gonna ask you every question they can.
Do you have any other questions for Sue? I think we ought to give her a hand. My daughter took this program. She's 55 years old and she's working her butt off. She absolutely loves sonography.
Yeah, she's a great time.
Yeah. So, all right, well, thank you both very much. We appreciate it.
It's a great program.
Another 24 that graduated, they're already in college. Oh my gosh.
Since I graduated high school in 1980.
They come a couple of times.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Excuse me, I gotta go.
80 credit hours? At the college level?
There's some early college high school.